Hi, this is Paul, and this is Rough Draft for Sunday, where I run through the current status of my Sunday sermon. You can find the Sunday sermon on the church YouTube channel, and the link to that is in the notes of this video. Speed and leadership. Lately, I've been reading a really interesting biography of Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon was a huge figure in the history of the modern world. Napoleon reshaped Europe and really brought it into the modern age. He was given the command of the French army in 1796, and he was exiled in 1814. He did all of this in a short 18 years, most of which time he was fighting. But he still managed to set forth ideas and practices and policies in Europe that are still in place today. 18 years. That's what it took him. It's an amazing thing. Here's another amazingly quick leader, Alexander the Great. He reigned from 336 BC to 323 BC, died at age 32. He was in power for 13 years. Was called the Son of God, given everything that he did. He brought Greek culture and Greek ways all throughout the ancient, what would be the ancient Eastern Mediterranean. And when the Romans came through, the Romans just gobbled up Greek culture and made it their own. Important foundational leader, died young, in power for only 13 years. Astounding leader, reshaped the world. Jesus of Nazareth. We have no historical photo. There's plenty of likenesses out there, but no historical image necessarily. 3 years of public work, never wrote a book, never raised an army, nor captured a city or a throne. What did he leave behind? No biological descendants to our knowledge. 1 in every 200 men are descendants of Genghis Khan. Basically, according to what we know, 0 from Jesus. Billions of people call him God. I've never heard anybody call Napoleon God. Nobody today would call Alexander the Great God. Billions of people call Jesus God. Another book that I've been reading, The Secret of Our Success. Fascinating book, because we think that, well, human beings have done such amazing things on this planet because we're smart. Well, they do all these testings on people, and apparently we're not that smart. The secret of our success is actually us. It's other people. And this capacity to work together and do things together and learn together and create things and on and on and on. But by the way, hell is other people too. And so what was the secret of Jesus' success? Now, last week we saw Jesus go back to his hometown, and on the Sabbath he was given the chance to stand up and give a little homily in the synagogue, and on one hand they were terribly impressed by him, and on the other hand they were offended by him, because it seems for the years up to his public ministry he was unimpressive, at least sufficiently unimpressive to impress the people that he grew up with. And in fact, his change in impressiveness and his change in mode and his reputation seemed to bring them to despise him. And so they did things like say, "Is this not the carpenter, the son of Mary?" That wasn't a nice thing today say. They're supposed to say he's the son of Joseph. They're insinuating and sneering and thinking that he's uppity, and they took offense at him. And we've been reading in the Gospel of Mark all of these astounding things that he did. But now the very next passage goes like this. Returning, I can't see it because the thing is covering it. The 12 to him, he began to send them out 2 by 2, and he gave them authority over impure spirits. We talked about that a little bit when we talked about the Gerasene demoniac. We're referencing the Old Testament now, and this cultural, structural system by which the Mosaic Law tried to instruct the people, it seems, into order and propriety. And these spirits were things that brought people out of order. These were his instructions. Take nothing for the journey except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in your belts. Wear sandals, but not an extra shirt. Whenever you enter a house, stay there until you leave the town. No twiddling around for the best place to stay. And if any place will not welcome you or listen to you, leave that place and shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them. Just that. They went out and preached that people should repent. They drove out many demons and anointed many sick people with oil and healed them. Now you might say, wow, Jesus, that training program he had sure was fancy. Well, did Jesus attract the brightest and the best like some Ivy League school? Not that we can tell. He seemed to get a group of people who shouldn't have gotten along very well. And they're too old, they're too strange, they're too diverse, and they're too dim. The written accounts we have of Jesus' life that come to us from the gospel seem to be written by the disciples of Jesus' disciples. And you would imagine that the disciples would embellish these things to help their reputation, but the disciples in these gospels usually come off as witless, clueless, lacking faith, and completely missing the point of what Jesus was trying to do. And in fact, Jesus, who has a reputation for being extremely tolerant and nice to people like sinners and tax collectors, was really pretty hard on his disciples and regularly told them that they were faithless and asked how long, even though his public ministry was only 3 years, how long would he have to deal with their worthless selves? You find Jesus getting vexed and exasperated from time to time. And, well, shouldn't Jesus be more patient? Well, you'll have to take that up with Jesus. Well, maybe they were in class for years. No, he only had 3 years of public ministry, and this thing seems to come on the front end. This thing seems to be a training course. Well, why on earth would you send these people out? Well, 2 by 2, at least it seems to be some kind of strategy that maybe they won't mess up too badly. But he sends them out and he gives them authority. Well, what does that mean? Well, if a governor gives authority, we understand that. If there's some institution and they give authority, we understand that. Well, we're not quite sure what he gives them authority, that he empowers them, he enables them. Well, how does he do this? Well, he stilled a storm by a word. Well, this woman picks his miracle pocket and is healed by a touch. Well, we'll just assume he could do it. And they take nothing. And they stay until they leave the town. Like I said, they don't farm out for the nicest house in the neighborhood. And if they're not welcome, which will happen, they get out and they say, okay, it's on your own head. And they drove out these unclean spirits, these demons, and they anointed sick people with oil, and they healed them. Well, that's surprising. What is with this authority that he gives them? Now, most world changers like Napoleon or Alexander, they kill their enemies because it's usually how you deal with people who don't think like you. Well, we don't really do it in this civilized society, which is good, but in many of the places in the world, they still do. We have laws against that, which are good, but for the most part, this is how people make names for themselves, how they establish large empires. Genghis Khan, well, he sort of raped his way to the top, apparently, if he has that many descendants. You control people by fear and coercion. It's his welfare at the expense of others, and then you curry patronage and favoritism, and that's the way you get people to do what you want to do. It doesn't seem that Jesus paid his disciples a salary, however. But then he gives them this authority, and it works. And instead of scaring people, they seem to go into town and heal people and do good for people and then just leave. That's it. Don't seem to ask for money. They don't seem to try to cash in on it in any way. They don't seem to mobilize them by handing out swords or spears or pamphlets or anything like that. They just go into town. And this brokenness that is in impure spirits, and this brokenness that is in illness and sickness, and again, because of the connection to the Old Testament Mosaic law, this has reverberation and resonance far beyond just the individual cases. They seem to be healing the world. Well, maybe it's bred in circuses, and there seemed to be that dynamic with the Galilean ministry. People start getting excited about Jesus' next handout, and they want to see the show. But in John 6, Jesus basically rains on their parade, and eventually will cut it out because This is what they're turning it into, which is what we do. Good old Juvenal said, "Give them bread and circuses, and they never will revolt." Good old George Orwell made the observation: "Football, beer, and above all gambling filled up the horizons of their mind. To keep them in control was not difficult. Appeal to your base, marginalize your opposition, give them bread and circuses, stay on top with a combination of carrots and sticks." The disciples did one other thing when they went out. They went out and preached. Well, we tend to find preaching annoying. If someone says to you, "Stop preaching at me," it's usually not a good thing. And this a preacher knows. They went out and preached that people should repent. Well, repent of what? Well, they probably had some idea, probably sitting on the edge of their bed thinking all the things they had done wrong, even if they don't quite know whether or not they believe in God, kind of wondering to talk to the emptiness in the room. Each of us probably has some idea, too, that we should repent. Something we know we should stop doing. Something we know hurts others. Something we know isn't even good for us and has been holding us back. And we're always trying to colonize others. We're always trying to not change ourselves and change other people and make all the other people do the dirty work and the hard work and the heavy lifting so that life can be easy for us. Usually this colonization is annoying and sometimes it's evil. But this is how we are. Now Jesus sends out his hapless followers and people are healed and delivered. Everyone wants to bottle Jesus. Everybody wants to colonize Jesus, but Jesus won't be colonized. What he will do for us, however, is a lot more than some tricks and favors and miracles. He gives his whole life to us. And we wonder, should he? Is that a good idea? Is that responsible? Do we need it? Have I sinned that much? That wasn't what we had in mind and how we wanted to colonize him. We wanted miracles and favors and things fixed so that we could basically not have to repent. And then he rises again. And so we doubt, and so we ponder. Now, the near kingdom that they preached and his name seemed to go out, and it's no secret that we're not much less hapless or evil than his disciples. The church has been considerably more hapless and evil than his disciples, in fact, in many times and places. In the very big, very long-term picture, it's nothing like anything else we've seen on earth. It doesn't look anything like Napoleon or Alexander's conquests. His people, in awkward ways, usually badly, often haphazardly and accidentally, but sometimes in glorious starkness to everything else in the world, his people live for their neighbors, believing his resurrection will be theirs, and in that way pouring out their lives for others in really costly, really sacrificial ways. And when we see that, well, we don't know what to do with ourselves. We kind of want to be like them, but we're very scared. So what should we do? Well, we should ask Jesus, and we should trust Jesus, and we should follow Jesus.